Sam from Road Trail Run here. I want to give you my video review of the ASICS GLIDERIDE, which is launching for sale September 27th worldwide. So the GLIDERIDE was introduced at an amazing event out on western Utah on the Bonneville Salt Flats. I was really tickled and honored to attend. It was tough. We had to run as far as we could while maintaining a target pace. So I apologize a little bit for the white coloring, but that's salt, wet salt we were running on. You can see some additional pictures here. And then also at the end, I've linked to the Eternal Run video. So back to the GLIDERIDE. Well, it's a $150 shoe, and it really represents ASICS' very first, I would call, maximally cushioned shoe. It comes in at 10.2 ounces or 249 grams, which is about the same weight as the Cumulus, and we'll discuss that later. The stack is 31 millimeters at the heel and 26 at the front. So it's a 5 millimeter drop, and whereas the very first kind of shoe in the Ride series was the MediRide, which was a zero drop shoe with a bit more cushioning and about an ounce more weight. So what ASICS has set out to do here with the GLIDERIDE is create a shoe which is really quite stiff. There is some flex, whereas the MediRide didn't have any, using what they call their guidance sole. So the guidance sole is designed to reduce lower leg movement, and they do that with a stout heel counter. It's actually more comfortable, I think, than any other ASICS heel counter I've had, and the curvature of the sole as well as the stiffness. So the science behind it, and there's been quite a bit of science by ASICS and a third party, is they want to reduce ankle energy loss, and but to do that, you want to cut back on dorsiflexion, which is the toes going up, and plantar flexion, the toes going down. And I would say it's successful in doing that. They're very stable and consistent on the run. And I have a feeling of kind of great consistency in this shoe. So underfoot, well, for me, quite a bit of difference from the usual ASICS cushioning and even the MediRide. What they've done here is they've inverted, if you will, the layers. In the Cumulus, we have Flight Fell Propel, which is kind of bouncy right below the foot, which is the gray layer, and then Flight Foam below that. What they've done here is they have a top layer of Flight Foam and a bottom layer of Propel. So the Propel provides kind of the bouncy, a bit more of a bouncy response, and the Flight Foam feels a little denser. ASICS tells me they're both of the same density or firmness, and I could really feel that. One of the things you notice with the GLIDERIDE is a very consistent feel from heel to toe in terms of the cushioning. It's not soft, bouncy. It's more than adequate, and as they claim, I find it really quite a responsive midsole feel. In the mix is a plate, but it's a little bit different than what we're starting to see and used to, those carbon plates or stiff plastic plates. This is actually a firm EVA. By pressing, I can feel that it's not as firm as, say, a plastic plate or certainly a carbon plate, but it is quite firm. And the plate really helps provide a nice rolling motion. So the idea is this shoe is really designed around heel strikers, and most of us, in fact, heel strike. So when you land on the lateral side, we have a thin, discrete layer of gel to provide a bit of cushioning, and then we roll forward with that ankle immobilized. The rocker isn't as extreme as the MetaRide, the zero drop MetaRide, where you really felt kind of a sudden drop forward after kind of a flat rear feel. The feel here is quite a bit more sophisticated, I say, smoother. Now, moving to the upper is a really nice engineered mesh. It's very simple, relatively speaking, for ASICS. If you look over here, we have extensive heel clutch plastic. We have quite a few overlays. We have lots of cushioning. And then with our Cumulus, we have a relatively stiff upper compared to this upper. So this is a very comfortable upper, about one of the finest trainer uppers I've run in all year. Just simple engineered mesh. There's a little bit of reinforcement inside on the medial side. You might be able to see those black strips, a little bit more support. The heel clutching kinds of elements are streamlined. There's less thickness to them. Of course, you do have a good stiff heel counter. That's part of the magic of the shoe. So the fit was true to size, absolutely no problems. It's not wide, but I think people with moderately wide shoes, who maybe are sometimes between a wide size and a regular, will be fine here. As of right now, at release, there won't be any wide sizing. The tongue is moderately padded, nothing overly plush or overdone. And one neat thing is it has some kind of ridges which really hold the laces. This is a shoe that you lace, put on, and go off comfortably. I've never really had to do any adjustments. Now, in terms of the ride, I've run it at a variety of paces, including a perceived energy test, a perceived exertion test before the Eternal Run. And I found that at all paces except what was called extremely fast, and for me that was in the 7s at the time. I was at altitude and it was hot. They move along real smoothly. I did find at that extreme pace that I couldn't quite kind of rock forward as much as I'd like to. I seem to be popping up. And that's something I also see in a shoe, I think, that has a fairly similar kind of concept, the Carbon X. When you really go fast, you're sort of popping up. Whereas in, say, the Vaporfly, you feel you're falling forward. Now, speaking of the Nikes, I will say that this shoe would be a really good alternative for people who find the Zoomfly 2 anyway. I haven't run the 3, kind of firm in the forefoot and kind of overly stiff. I got quite tired in the Zoomflies too. So this would be a great alternative at $150. It has essentially, compared to the Zoomfly 3, which has 36 millimeters heel, 28 millimeter stack, you know, you've got a bit more heel in the Zoomfly, but this is very, very stable. Now, if we want to compare to some of our other ASICS, for example, the Cumulus 21, which comes in at about exactly the same weight. Here you have a 29 millimeter heel, 19 millimeter forefoot, and quite a bit of rubber underneath. Less of that very deep guidance groove that we have here. I find the Cumulus firmer, stiffer, even though it's actually a bit more flexible, and not nearly as much fun to run as the new GLIDERIDE. A few other shoes to compare it to. The New Balance Fresh Foam More. Well, the Fresh Foam More has almost identical stats, weight and stack, but it has no rocker, and it is a chore. I found really a chore to run, and while it's responsive as the GLIDERIDE is, it is just not nearly as much fun. So, in conclusion, and watch my video at the end there of the Eternal Run. It's pretty amazing. Also, the GLIDERIDE is coming out September 27th. It's $150. I'm going to call it ASICS' first real maximally cushioned shoe because it has a 31 millimeter heel and a big 26 millimeter forefoot. It weighs 10.2 ounces, or I'm sorry, I made a mistake earlier, 289 grams. It's a very smooth, well-cushioned ride. It's not a super soft ride, but it certainly, you can't call it firm. As far as best uses, certainly as a daily trainer for really all paces from moderate to faster tempo. I think actually it'll be a very good choice for marathoners, say in the 3:15, 3:20, 4 hour and up a little bit range, because of that stability and that rolling along with the cushion. A little bit heavier than some racing shoes, but at those kind of paces, and that's kind of where I am these days, provide a lot of protection and a lot of consistency. So we're going to have a full written review real soon on Road Trail Run. Thank you very much for watching.